Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Now this start video. The temporary pause in U.S. military aid to Ukraine has not only heightened the stakes for Sir Keir Starmer, but also underscored the fragility of the Western alliance in the face of shifting geopolitical priorities. While the UK Prime Minister has been lauded for his diplomatic efforts, the reality is that his ability to influence the trajectory of the conflict now faces its most significant test. The pause in aid, whether temporary or a precursor to a more permanent shift in U.S. policy, has exposed the limits of Starmer's leverage and raised questions about the UK's role in a rapidly evolving international order. Starmer's strategy has been predicated on positioning the UK as a mediator between the US and Ukraine, a role that requires not only diplomatic finesse, but also tangible influence over both parties. However, the recent developments have laid bare the challenges of this approach. President Trump's decision to halt aid, seemingly without prior consultation with Starmer, suggests that the UK's influence in Washington may be more tenuous than previously assumed. This is particularly concerning given the Prime Minister's repeated assertions that he has a strong working relationship with Trump. If Starmer was indeed blindsided by the decision, it raises doubts about the depth of that relationship and the extent to which the UK can shape U.S. policy on Ukraine. Moreover, the pause in aid has amplified the urgency of Starmer's efforts to broker a peace deal. While the Prime Minister has been praised for his focus on diplomacy, the reality is that time is not on his side. The conflict in Ukraine has already dragged on for years, with no end in sight. The withdrawal of U.S. military support, even temporarily, could embolden Russia and weaken Ukraine's negotiating position, making it even harder to achieve a lasting peace. Starmer's task is further complicated by the fact that any peace deal would need to be acceptable not only to Ukraine and Russia, but also to the U.S. and other key Western allies. The pause in aid has made this delicate balancing act even more precarious. The situation is further exacerbated by the increasingly fractious transatlantic relationship. The comments by U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, which appeared to dismiss the military capabilities of European nations, have added another layer of complexity to the diplomatic landscape. While Vance has since clarified that his remarks were not directed at the UK or France, the incident has highlighted the growing tensions within the Western alliance. For Starmer, this presents a significant challenge. The UK's ability to convene and lead in Europe is contingent on the perception of its strength and reliability. If the US administration continues to publicly undermine its allies, it could erode the UK's standing and make it harder for Starmer to rally support for his diplomatic initiatives. At the same time, the pause in aid has reignited debates about Europe's reliance on the US for its security. For years, European nations have been criticized for failing to meet NATO's defense spending targets, leaving them heavily dependent on American military support. The current crisis has underscored the risks of this dependency. While some European countries have begun to increase their defense budgets in response to the conflict in Ukraine, progress has been slow and uneven. This has left the continent vulnerable to shifts in U.S. policy, as evidenced by the recent pause in aid. For Starmer, this presents both a challenge and an opportunity. On the one hand, he must navigate the fallout from the U.S. decision and reassure Ukraine of the UK's continued support. On the other hand, he could use this moment to push for greater European defense cooperation and reduce the continent's reliance on the U.S. However, any move in this direction would require careful handling. The UK's relationship with the US remains a cornerstone of its foreign policy, and Starmer will be keen to avoid any actions that could be perceived as undermining that relationship. At the same time, he must also contend with the growing calls for a more independent European security strategy. Striking the right balance between these competing priorities will be no easy task, particularly in the context of a deeply polarized domestic political environment. As the situation continues to evolve, it is clear that Starmer's approach to Ukraine will be scrutinized more closely than ever. The pause in U.S. aid has not only raised the stakes for his diplomatic efforts, but also highlighted the broader challenges facing the UK in a rapidly changing world. With the transatlantic alliance under strain and Europe's security architecture in flux, Starmer must navigate a complex and unpredictable landscape. The coming weeks and months will be critical in determining whether he can rise to the occasion and secure a lasting peace in Ukraine, or whether the UK's influence on the global stage will continue to wane. In the meantime, the pause in aid serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of the Western alliance and the need for a more cohesive and coordinated approach to addressing the challenges of the 21st century. For Starmer, this is not just a test of his diplomatic skills, but also a defining moment for his leadership and the UK's role in the world. The stakes could not be higher.